To fully understand the significance of the role of the US Army at the port of Southampton in World War II, it is helpful to know the background to decisions regarding the so-called Second Front, which were to shape the post-war world. The US President Franklin D. Roosevelt held the key position in a wartime coalition of 26 countries he called the United Nations. He, Joseph Stalin and Winston Churchill comprised the Big Three at the heart of this coalition, but as the war progressed, FDR increasingly acted as the group's ultimate broker and decision maker. The Allied strategies that won World War II were forged at the conferences held at Tehran and Yalta, where the Big Three discussed war issues and the peace that followed. The issue of a second front commanded the greatest attention. The Soviet Union had single-handedly resisted a German invasion, and Stalin demanded his allies strike at the heart of Hitler's empire in northwest Europe, establishing a second front. Impatient with Anglo-American postponement, Stalin demanded a firm commitment to a date for the invasion of northwest Europe. Churchill favoured further delay, arguing instead for new military initiatives in Italy and the Balkans. But FDR sided with Stalin, and the three leaders agreed to a spring 1944 invasion.
And all unexpectedly it happened. Instead of a routine combined operations exercise, the invasion was on. Democracy was to cross swords with the Nazi for the last time. The supreme importance of the task confronting the Allied forces demanded that this time there should be no failure in the supply lines. Southampton's dock roads were crammed with vehicles impatiently waiting for a cross-channel passage. During 1944, the gross tonnage of Southampton shipping totaled 23 million tons, excluding the small craft. 2 million tons were dealt with over the Keys. The men over there were undoubtedly getting full support from the war factories of Britain, and America too. Largely due to the unexpectedly heavy weather during the actual invasion, things had not gone entirely smoothly. There came constant and urgent demands for further supplies and reinforcements, and, as always, Southampton somehow coped with a large share of this tremendous traffic.
D-Day was the culmination of FDR's grand strategy to defeat Germany first. The invasion took years to organise. Millions of men and millions of tons of equipment were transported to Great Britain. It established a solid second front in Europe, leaving Hitler's armies trapped in a vice, fighting the Soviets in the east and the Allied forces in the west. The principal port, called the 14th major port of embarkation during this period for the US Army from D-Day to the end of the war, was Southampton. In July 1944 it took over the running of 40 camps. In October 44 the Plymouth operation was taken over as Subport B. On the 25th of October 44 the millionth Yank went through Southampton for France, and on the 27th of October 22,465 troops were shipped to the continent in a 24-hour period. On the 12th of November Weymouth and Portland were also activated as a subport, and on the 16th of January the 2 millionth Yank embarked from Southampton. In total, the 14th major port at Southampton handled 229,016 casualties and 594,606 prisoners. 21,545 railway locomotives and wagons were exported, as well as 250,000 tanks, armoured vehicles and lorries. It is estimated that 10,915 vessels were loaded and discharged, and a total of 3,640,165 personnel handled. In his address to his troops at the end of the war, Sherman Hell Kaiser, colonel of the Transportation Corps commanding the 14th major port, said, "It was through your efforts as a checker, stevedore, planner, tractor driver, mechanic, medic, mess cook, or a dozen other specialists that the first wave of combat forces were placed upon the Utah and Omaha beaches. You sent second and third waves to reinforce them. The statistics show that the cargo handled at the port of Southampton since D-Day was greater than ever handled by any other port in the world in a comparable period of time.